New Year to everybody. I'm so excited to be back for season 3. I was gonna hold up 6, but season 3 of The Color of Motion. I am super excited to be back, man. 2 weeks. It seems like a long time, but I hope everybody had a great holiday season and have a great start to their new year. Trying little things a little differently this time. Starting out live before I jump into the intro for the show. Wanted to connect with you. But like I said, I am just super glad to be back and cannot wait to get this episode off the ground. Just to start off, make sure that you jump into the Facebook group community. Get plugged in, facebook.com/the/groups/the color of motion. Get plugged in. We definitely want you to be a part of the family. We share industry news, have great conversations, and all around fun. So I definitely don't want you to miss out. So make sure that you hop on over and get plugged in there. Like I said, I got a lot of new things planned that I'm going to try for season 3. So just super excited to unveil that and get it kicked off. And like I said, hopefully you'll come along for the ride. I appreciate it. Miss Maggie, I appreciate you tuning in there as always. Man, oh man, like I said, I missed you guys for a long time, it seems like. So I'm just, again, super glad to be back. Let me kick off by saying, introducing, well, not introducing, but letting you know the sponsor for today's show, DG Graphics. They do all our overlays, graphics, animations, and they make us look good. So, hey, what can I say? If you are a business or brand that's looking to level up your brand design, create some engaging content, and tell your brand story in a much more impactful way so that you can connect with your customers and clients, you definitely want to reach out to DG Graphics. And so appreciate them for being a long time, sponsor of the show. Oh, man. Oh, I feel a little rusty, but hey, I'm going to try and get through this, and we're going to have a great time for sure. What else? Make sure that you connect with me on all my social channels here. You can find me right here on all my social channels. Connect with me. I definitely want to hear from you. Like I said, I'm trying some new things this season, but definitely I'm always open to any suggestions that you might have for me to try for the show. So you can connect with me on all my social channels there for sure. Like I said, we broadcast live each and every Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. on YouTube, LinkedIn, although I'm not kind of promoting kind of LinkedIn, but you can still check out the show live on LinkedIn. The Facebook group community and the website as well is where you can check out the show. So I always highly suggest, though, that people get plugged into the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification, give a thumbs up, comment, because that definitely helps the algorithm for sure. But we definitely want you to get plugged in. There you can check out all the great past guests that we've had and get notified when any new great content comes up on the channel and the show goes live. So definitely hop on over to youtube.com/Don Terrell and subscribe, become a part of the family. Definitely want to see you over there for sure. Man, what else? I feel like there's just so much that, like I said, I have to tell. We got a lot of great things, like I said, planned. Oh, definitely, like I said, last year we got the store open so you can pick up some swag. I want to see people in the Color of Motion swag. As you can see from some of the pictures there, a lot of people sporting their Color of Motion gear. There you can pick up some nice hoodies, shirts, mugs, even some iPhone cases. And we'll always be putting new products up. So definitely make sure that you hop on over to the store and pick up some stuff. Again, colorofmotion.net/swag. Wow, sorry. That was not the right thing. Okay, let me hop on over here. So for sure, be a part of it. Miss Maggie, like I said, I appreciate that. Hopefully, let's see. I want to make sure I get myself back in the right spot here. Let me know what you think. I'm trying a little different. Like I said, black and white. So something a little different on this monologue kind of scene before we get kicked off into the show. And like I said, I feel like trying to remember everything, and I'm pretty sure as the show goes on, I will. So, again, I can't thank you enough for joining me. Been super looking forward to my next guest. We connected early last year at the Houston Comic Palooza. We were both on a panel, so definitely felt like we needed to get together, get her on the show. So excited to have her kick off season 3. Like I said, we're going to get this train moving on the tracks. Like I said, I'm trying to be kind of mindful this season of time management as well. I always tell my guests, I try to keep it about 45 minutes to an hour, but as you know, they kind of tend to go long. So I'm trying to get more into the time management of the show. I did say, like I said, give a shout out to our sponsor, but you too can help me support the show. Hey, I love a great cup of coffee. buymeacoffee.com/Don Terrell. You can support the show. That helps me to continue to put great content up and come to you each and every week. So definitely, please, like I said, help out the show. It would definitely help me to continue to, like I said, bring great content to you. So with that, we're going to get this show on the road. So stay tuned. All right. Let me jump over. True. Yes, we are back. And we are going to get this show off to a great start. Again, you know the drill. Hop into the comments. Definitely, like I said, want to make this, as always, an engaging episode. So I definitely want to hear from you, where you're tuning in from. That always makes me feel good. So, because I can give you the shout out that, you so richly deserve, for sure. So, my next guest, like I said, I'm super excited about my next guest. Again, like I said, we connected at the Houston Comic Palooza last year. We were both on a panel for Black podcasters, and she has a great podcast that several podcast that she does. We're going to dive into that. And without further ado, my next guest, Sir Auntie Sharmane Fury, aka daBlasianBlerd, is the busiest mixed race, bisexual, polyamorous, atheist comic book nerd, cat bomb, award-winning podcaster in the podcasting game. She is the co-host of Militantly Mixed, BLERDcoMIXed, Bifurious, and the Queer and Fire podcast. She believes in creating a platform for people of color voices to be heard. Her company, ManeHustle Media, is dedicated to the for us, by us, and about us approach. Please, everybody, help me welcome my very special guest and friend, Miss Sharmane Fury.
So many people in the room.
Like I said, we like to bring our guests on in style. Sharmane, it is so good to see you. Happy New Year, of course. And like we were talking before, I hope you had a great holiday season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm packing, but yeah, I'm ready for my new year to start in 75 days.
For all those that didn't know, she's moving, so
I'm moving.
That's why she's packing. So I'm glad I've had a chance to get her on before then, for sure. But like I said, we got a chance to meet early last year at Houston Comic Palooza. We were both on the panel for Black podcasters talking about comics and just connected. And I thought you'd make a great guest on the show, sitting in and dive into your story, your journey, your thoughts on the industry, and just everything that's going on. Like I said, you also BLERDcoMIXed.
BLERDcoMIXed.
Blerd, which is short for BLERDcoMIXed. And you also podcast about Black pop culture as well. So for sure. So I'm curious, like I said, you're an interesting person, Sharmane. So I'm curious how you were as a child.
Pretty much exactly the same. I looked exactly the same. I'm just bigger, and I've always been a nerd. I grew up like really interested in Batman and the Batman villains when I was a kid, and X-Men kicked in and started to show me like, oh, my metaphor for what kind of person I was as a mixed kid was the X-Men were somewhat like me. We looked kind of normal, but we were kind of different than everybody else around us and stuff like that. So seeking that representation, I found it in comics in a way that I couldn't find it in other things. And so I was always really into comic books and superhero stories, sci-fi, things like that. A little bit of fantasy, but mostly sci-fi and comics. And then I was always a big mouth. Like I always talked a lot, which is why I became a podcaster. And I was one of those people that even from an early age would like stand up about racism or different things like that. So the kind of work I do now is all geared towards intersectionality, being a nerd. And then on top of that, I was a queer kid who didn't understand what my deal was because I liked boys, but I liked girls too. But I didn't know you were allowed to do that kind of stuff. Like I didn't know that was possible. I just thought there was something weird about me. So yeah, comics books showed me that I could be my weird ass self. And
but even then, did you see? I mean, because like I said, I think X-Men and a few others, but X-Men mainly was which. From what I've read from Stan Lee was kind of the reason, why he created X-Men, just, having people that was different. And, different. But did you see a lot of characters? Because, like I said, I didn't, see a lot of diverse characters. And even in the, characters of color, there were a few. I followed Luke Cage and, some of the other smaller ones. But there weren't a lot of, like I said, queer or Black or just Latino, superhero characters or characters in that kind of space.
There were nuggets. I call it like the and like as a person of color, I think in general we're always looking for the nugget that we can relate to because TV so white, movie so white, all that other kind of stuff. Like you got no choice but to try to relate or force yourself to relate
Yeah.
to an aspect of the thing. So you find that little nugget and then you just grab onto it, right? Like I I think with X-Men in particular, the reason why I was able to gravitate towards it as both a mixed kid and as a queer kid was that there was coded language happening that could slip past the people it wasn't meant for
Yeah.
and could speak directly to me, which I think we do a lot, like in the way that we make a joke or something like that and everybody around us laughs, but maybe the white folks that are around us might not pick up on what just happened. That kind of stuff was happening, I think, in comics. And since for a lot of people who don't know, comics was queer as hell. It always was. It
Really?
was where the people that weren't a part of the mainstream went
Yeah.
to create. And
Yeah.
in doing so, like a lot of the early comics were heavily Jewish, because the Jewish people at that time were the outcasts of mainstream culture. So they wrote characters like Superman is a Jewish immigrant, but they just made him from space so that other people would pay attention to him.
Oh, it's
Things like
interesting.
that would start happening. And I think when X-Men was when I became exposed to it, I guess at that time it was being written by queer writers that were in the closet.
Wow.
So a lot of the stuff that was happening in the stories were speaking to me because I didn't understand that was kind of what was going on with me. And then as far as black and brown characters, for me, my trouble is always that there's never like a hybrid character that makes sense for me. I'm a black Japanese British American.
Yeah.
So I get hey, that's my co-host is over there. So I get I grew up predominantly black with what I call weekend Japanese. Like when I'd go to grandma's house and stuff on the weekend. But whenever I was out in the world, I was black, except for when I was around Japanese people and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And so I knew that people knew I was slightly different from them, but they always made me feel black. Like growing up in Long Beach, no one ever said I wasn't black. They was just like if I said something that didn't code correctly and there was a new black person around, they'd be like, "She's got a Japanese mom." Okay, fine. The comics was doing something like that for me, is that it was giving me characters like Jubilee, who is I'm Japanese, not Chinese, but she's Chinese raised
Yeah.
by white people. She's a transracial adoptee.
Mm.
And so she didn't fit in her family. Not just because she had powers, but because she's yellow and her people and her family was white. Nobody looks like me in my family. We all look alike and don't look alike at all. We're all different colors, we all have different hair textures and stuff. So I could relate to someone like Jubilee in those little nuggets of there's things about us that are somewhat similar. And then I just wanted to be Storm because
Ah, who doesn't?
I mean, you just want to be Storm. And so I would say things like, I wish there was like a Storm Jubilee, like
Mix.
if I can get that, then I could see something of me in there. But until then I just found nuggets.
Yeah.
And then we had Bishop
Yeah.
and
Bishop.
even some of the characters that are white, they're non I don't want to use the word mainstream, but that's kind of the word that's popped up. There's something about them that sets them apart from the standard, heterosexual white all
Yeah.
American guy. And in that case, you can kind of find those nuggets there too to
Yeah.
relate to. And so that was always the way that I found myself. I did have to be kind of a closet nerd for a while because black kids couldn't be nerds in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world now. They get to be nerds, and
Yeah, I think
please
nerd's a
embrace.
badge of honor now. Or blurred.
Yeah,
Being a blurred is a badge of honor
it
now.
is now, but back in the day, we had to hide it. And so much so that my co-host on BLERDcoMIXed, I've told this story in a bunch of different places. We've known each other since we were 8 years old. We're both
Mm.
mixed black, um, and we were both nerds, but we didn't know that about each other. We found out that about each other in our 30s.
Oh
Now
wow.
like I said, we've
And
known each other since we're 8 years old. We're very close. We started a podcast because we decided that like we had to kind of get to know each other again as nerd friends. And I grew up in this fool's house. Like his mom used to watch me, and I managed to never find out he was into comics either.
oh
And
wow,
had we known
really?
that when we were little, we could have been. I mean, it would have cut some costs down because we could have been sharing books. There's all
Sharing
kinds of
books.
things like that. But we didn't know that about each other, and so we had to learn that about each other in our 30s. And now we have the show BLERDcoMIXed together, which is a mix of us talking about being, black nerds, but we're also mixed. So there's always something different going
Yeah.
on with us. We're into comics. So blurred, com mixed, like we're just, it's all.
Yeah.
And since we both um, access pop culture through a black lens, or at least a mixed black lens, that's the stuff we kind of talk about on that show.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how to look at nerd shit from a white perspective.
Yeah.
I'm partially white, but I don't know those people. I wasn't raised around them. I knew
Yeah.
one white lady in my family, my British grandmother.
Yeah.
And so I don't really know how to relate to the mainstream pop culture through their lens.
That
I can't
lens,
move
yeah.
that way.
Wow, wow, for sure. Mr. Demille, appreciate you, brother, for tuning in. Happy New Year to you. As always, appreciate that. Like
That's my other
Sharmane
podcast,
said,
Queer and
that's
Far.
her,
My
yeah, Queer
my
and Far
co-host Shay.
podcast. That's her co-host there. So glad to have you support Sharmane and join the Color of Motion here and be a part of the conversation for sure. You also had a comic book store, I think you said, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
What was kind of your experience running the comics book store, and was it for you important to have not the mainstream type of
Hmm.
comics in there?
Yes, so it's still in existence. It's called Gulf Coast Cosmos. It's on Stewart Street here in Houston in Third Ward. My business partner Byron Kennedy and I, we went to business school like 10, 12 years ago. And we were the only two black comic book nerds that were in that mix. So we've been talking about that for several years. Like we were both into this, and I told him I wanted to start a comic book shop. And he had an opportunity to do it here in the Third Ward in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do it back in LA. And then he invited me to join him on his mission to create this business. And so that's what we did. I was still living in LA at the time, but our mission, both of us, was that we focused on a predominantly black client base.
Yeah,
We wanted it to be in a predominantly and historically black community because of the kinds of things that aren't in these types of neighborhoods. So
yeah.
I moved here to the Third Ward. It's a lot like the neighborhood I grew up in Long Beach, North Long Beach. We
It's
didn't have
changed a
comic book
lot
shop.
now.
Hmm?
I said it's changed. It's changed dramatically. Cause I used to work down in Third Ward,
Mm.
but it's
It's
changed.
pretty gentrified, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. And I can see the signs of it too. Like, I mean, part of me feels a little like an infiltrator because I'm not from the Third, but I came to the Third. But I grew up in North Long Beach, which is a really similar neighborhood. Like we were on the border of Compton. My high
Yeah.
school, you had to go through metal detectors, like the whole thing. It was a neighborhood. It was a rough neighborhood. But I had to get my comics out of a liquor store ran by Koreans, and she couldn't stand us being in there. So I
Mm,
would like, snatch them up real fast. She had a little spinner rack. I'd, buy my things, throw it in my backpack so my friends wouldn't see. And I just wanted us an experience where like black and brown kids could just go be nerds because
yeah.
I mean, not only did I have to hide it in the time I was growing up, I had to hide it from my own friends.
Wow.
My access point was a Korean lady who was screaming at us to get out of her store because she had a store right across the street from our school.
Yeah.
Which is very normal for an LA based like black neighborhood. Like a lot of the stores are
Yeah.
Korean owned and stuff like that. And so it was a conflict in that neighborhood between the kids that were local and what we could have access to. So Byron and I both set out because we wanted to create a space where a black and brown kid could just walk in and not have to be pressured to leave, but more than anything, see himself or herself when they open the door.
Yeah.
So at Gulf Coast Cosmos, we had all the posters, and still is the case. All the posters are black and brown characters. All of the books that we have facing out that
Yeah.
you can see are the black and brown characters. Can you get Superman still? Yes. Can you get your white Batman? Yes. They're
Yeah.
still in the boxes.
Yeah.
But what we wanted to create was very similar to what we assume it must be like for white folks when
Yeah.
they're at a comic book shop and they walk in and it's all white man,
Yeah.
it's all Captain America and Superman and white Batman and stuff like that on the walls, and everything facing out looks just like them. Where we have to dig, we have to ask questions, and of course, we get our nerd quizzed, whatever we're into, we get quizzed on when we enter a space. For me, as a brown femme, I walk into a comic book shop and I go grab a book and someone asks me if I'm buying it for my boyfriend, or they'll ask me if I know that I'm buying the second book of a series or
Yeah.
something like that. Um, and then I'll turn around and be, like show my little wristband to show that I know what I'm doing. And I just didn't want to put people that look like me or darker
Yeah.
in that same situation. And so we wanted to create a space that allowed people to just be brown and nerdy and it not be a big deal.
Yeah.
And so it's the most important part of the mission of that shop,
Yeah. Yeah.
is to make sure that that space was like that. And
Yeah.
we had those experiences. We had
Wow.
the little girl that looks like Moon Girl, and her dad is a comic book nerd, so I show him Moon Girl, so now he can read Moon Girl with his daughter and she gets to see herself. Or the teenage kid who comes in saying, can I wear cosplay next time I come in, and the next time he comes in he's dressed as Miles Morales. Like getting those moments to just be unapologetically comfortable in
Yeah.
our own skin
Yeah.
and reading comic book characters that look a lot like us. uh I mean,
It's
like
important.
Byron and I would cry in the beginning of the opening the shop. Like we would almost cry every single day because it was just like, oh, the people felt represented. Like it gets so
Oh
emotional. It's
man.
such a
And
good
there need to
experience.
be a
But
lot more just black comic book stores. It really does.
yeah,
Because it is something that's needed. Do you see now with Miles Morales, Into the Spider-Verse, Black Panther, do you see it starting to change now? I mean, what are your thoughts on how it's kind of going now, and just them putting out or making an effort, I guess,
yeah.
albeit, you know.
I will say that both the big two are doing a lot better in terms of inclusion, but the thing is, like, they've always had characters.
Yeah,
It's just that they were mostly sidekicks or villains or caricatures,
yeah,
of stereotypes of black and brown people. And now I'll say that Marvel did better with inclusion where it came to race, whereas DC did better with inclusion as it came to LGBTQ plus characters.
mm,
Both are integrating both now, but the difference is that in previous times when they've tried to include more black and brown characters, they still had white guys writing these characters.
yeah,
And that's how you get a Luke Cage that says "Sweet Christmas"
yeah.
instead of something that we might actually fucking say.
Sweet
um,
Christmas, guys.
Sweet Christmas, which is like a big pet peeve for me. I have friends who actually don't, it doesn't bother them, but for some reason, Sweet Christmas has bothered me from
Oh
jump. I've
man,
never been okay
I
with it.
cannot imagine a black guy walking around
You know
the
what I'm saying?
neighborhood saying "Sweet
From New
Christmas."
York? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's a black dude out there that's like 6'8", 325 who really says "Sweet Christmas" to be funny. I don't know. I ain't never met that fool,
Oh
but
man,
but so like in the beginning, a lot of the characters were sidekicks or they were this kind of
yeah,
black exploitation version of a
yeah,
thing. And now, like, I'll put it into this perspective. Shang-Chi, first Chinese American action hero in
yeah.
movies. First Asian action hero without an Asian accent in movies. In the comics, they just started getting written by an actual Chinese American person in the last 2 years.
Wow, wow,
So the caricature and the stereotype character that Shang-Chi has been all this time
yeah,
didn't start to get undone, and they got a lot of stuff to unpack. They got a lot of stuff to undo to get
yeah,
Shang-Chi to be a more appropriate character for this time period.
yeah.
Black Panther, he wasn't written by a black
Oh
person
no, he wasn't
until
even created by
19
a black person.
he wasn't
So,
created by a black person, right? But
yeah,
he didn't start getting written by a black person until I want to say 91 or something like
mm,
that. Maybe earlier. I'm not exactly sure. Christopher Priest was the
yeah,
first black person to write Black Panther. Now you actually have, Nubia. Nubia is Wonder Woman's twin sister.
yeah.
She
Twin
was started
sister.
in 1976. She's been written, when she has been present, she's been written by white people. It wasn't until this last couple years that she started getting written by black women. And now she's got her own series,
Yeah.
the Nubia series and the Queen of the Amazon series, which was being written by Stephanie Williams, who is dope and awesome and a black woman. And finally, someone is writing a character where she fucking makes sense. but that's a different thing. Um,
Oh man.
so now we finally have people who are actually there. The difference I think now is why people are actually willing to buy, whether they're black or white or
Yeah.
a different race, willing to buy books where the characters don't necessarily look like them. Is
Yeah.
there is more authenticity in the characters now because they're being written by
Yeah.
people from those
Yeah.
cultures and those groups. Echo is being written by an indigenous woman right now,
Yeah.
and she is an indigenous character. So the more that we start to see characters being written by the people from the cultures that they're writing from,
Yeah.
the subtle ways, like
Yeah.
it's not like you even have to write a culture book. You
Yeah.
just have to write a day in the life and
Yeah.
it being written by a person from that same category. Like
Yeah.
it wouldn't make sense for me to write Supergirl. I can't relate to a blonde white woman's experience in America.
Yeah.
Could I do it? Could I write a passable story? Sure.
Yeah.
Will it feel true? Probably not. But you get me a mixed girl from the from Long Beach, that like listens to hip hop and collects shoes and toys all day.
All day.
She's gonna
You'll
be real
nail
as
it.
hell. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's the difference is that while there always has been characters,
Yeah.
they're coming out of the sidekick shell.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
coming out of the stereotype shell,
Yeah.
and they're finally being written by people from
Yeah.
those categories. So I
Which
think the
was
biggest part is the diversity in the
which was
writers room.
why I was a big fan of Milestone when it came out.
Yes.
And I'm assuming, and let me know, did you carry Miles? Were
Yes.
you?
Yeah.
Yeah, carry
Yeah. So
Milestone.
the Milestone Universe came back out last year,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
they kind of started slowly with Static first, and then Hardware and
yeah,
Icon and Rocket. Now the Blood Syndicate book is out, which is
yeah,
everybody together. Uh, so yeah, we had those. We also got a chance. Byron did some interviews, I think, on our Instagram live with some of the creators there. I did interviews with Stephanie Williams. We interviewed Afua Richardson, who's writing her own book right now called Book of Myrrh. So we got a chance to actually talk to a lot of these
yeah,
black creators too. But
yeah.
yeah, we had posters of Icon and Rocket and Static Shock on our walls too, so people could see their hairstyles
Oh
in
man.
characters, their skin tones in characters. And sometimes that's all you kind of need. Like
Yeah,
I think that's getting a chance to walk into a comic book shop and you see T'Challa on the wall, or
yeah,
you see Shang-Chi or
yeah,
Echo or Static. Like,
yeah. And like you said, people, whites, they wouldn't understand it, the power that you feel when because it's just
mm,
typical. It's just mainstream for them when they go into a comic book or look at a superhero. They just assume
yeah,
white, so they don't understand just how powerful and how impactful that is when you do see a character that looks like you,
yeah,
and is created by somebody that looks like you. I always tell people because I wanted to be a comic strip
mm,
writer, but there weren't very many, and I grew up a Peanuts fan. I was a
right.
Peanuts nerd, and of course, all they had was Franklin.
Franklin.
So, but like I said,
And one of the good ones. Thank God. Dang it, man! They killed it with that. Yeah,
oh man, I'm telling you, you just don't see, you just don't get how powerful it is to see characters.
yeah.
Like I said, that just looks like you, and I didn't see characters that looked like me. Didn't even know that there were even comic strip,
Hmm.
creators that look like me out there. Even though they are, but that's just not what's put in the forefront for sure.
Right.
Oh man. Um, kind of, what was your doing the comic book store? What was kind of the biggest lesson that you kind of pulled away from just creating, getting into the comic book store space and seeing all the different comics that even the ones that you may not have known about that are out there.
Mm.
What was kind of the biggest lesson or thing that you kind of pulled away doing that experience?
The sad thing is, I will say that the experience was almost exactly what I expected it to be. As a person who is so underrepresented in media, I thought when I got in there and we opened those doors, we were gonna feel these moments constantly where someone was gonna be overwhelmed by sings a character that looked like them,
Yeah.
or just being happy that it was a peaceful place where they could just sit, where
Yeah.
someone wasn't standing over their shoulder or asking them for help too many times. We also had a patio, or have a patio there where you can sit and just hang out and read and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So in a lot of it, I didn't feel like anything was a surprise or a lesson really to learn. In terms of like content though, I discovered books that, I mean, even I, who aggressively do try to find things that represent me, I discovered books while just ordering that would stun me. Like there's was one book called Crema. The premise is that there's a girl who's a barista who can see ghosts, but only when she drinks coffee. So only when caffeinated can she see ghosts. A ghost realizes she can see her and is like, "Hey, I can you deliver this love letter to my long lost love in, I think, Colombia or something like that. And if you do that, I'll be able to be reunited with them and blah, 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 blah." So she's like, "Yeah, sure, why not? I'm just a barista here. Who cares?" And goes there to deliver a ghost a love letter. And in doing that, goes on her own love journey. What? Like, I had no idea that there were books that could be so like that, not just the superhero books, or that you could really have a day in the life that just came out of nowhere and was sweet and thoughtful and romantic even. So a lot of the stuff that I discovered was about books that were kind of in the genres I wouldn't have looked at before. Romance comics, um day in the life stuff,
Yeah.
historical educational fiction, that kind of stuff. um so there's a lot out there, and so much out there. The independent stuff, that's where you could get all your representation.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where your black and brown characters
Yeah.
mostly are. And so it gave me an opportunity to realize that, like, you had to dig a lot further beyond the big two to be able to, if you really wanted to see
Yeah.
representation, that was where you were going to get it. And we can shout and fight and tell the big two to pay attention to us, but if a person has the opportunity to produce their own book, that's where you kind of get the
Yeah.
reality of like what it's like to
Yeah.
exist in nerdiness as a brown
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
Um, and then
Which was
the biggest thing I think I learn
yeah.
is creating a peaceful space. Like that was an accidental part of creating the shop.
Yeah.
We had a patio space, so we set it up so that it can be where you can join there. But it was the fact that it wasn't natural to me to stand over the shoulder of a person. So I didn't stand over the shoulder of a person. And just by that being an accident of the way I am in customer service, people would feel good about being there.
Yeah.
And same with my business partner. He wasn't hovering over people or questioning why they were there. And that was just a natural thing for us, but it turned out to be one of the most important things I think about being in that shop, is that people could just go there and be left alone
Yeah. And explore and
and
find all
explore. Yeah.
and find all kinds of books.
And be there for 4 hours and not even realize it,
Yeah.
because we could talk a little and then they can move on, they can read a little, they'd come back and be like, "Oh, and another thing, how do you feel about this character?" And that they were never talked down to. I mean, Byron and I had different levels of comic book knowledge, and so there would be times when a conversation would start with one of us
Yeah.
and we'd bounce it to the other because the other one knows more about that or something. Um, but it just never felt like a very judgmental space. And the way I felt about being in that space, and it never felt very judgmental either from us or from
Yeah.
I mean, occasionally if I was alone in the shop, I would get a grown man in there to like, something about comics. Is like, literally my name is on the lease of this place, but go ahead, let's see what you got. It happened on occasion. It did, but you know,
I'm sure they were surprised for sure.
yeah.
And kind of going back to your other point, do you feel like it's gonna take those independent creators? It's not necessarily gonna come from the big two. More
Mm.
now, these independent creators that are creating their own comics and own stories. Do you feel like that's where the big change is gonna come from, with representation and people of
Yeah.
color?
I mean, I think that's the case in all type of things. Like the dial starts to move through independent art. I think we see that in things like Pulp Fiction. That was
Yeah,
an independent movie
yeah,
when it was, and from there a genre of that kind of movie was created. And whether or not he is or have always has been, or a problematic person now, um, art changed, movies changed after he made that movie,
yeah,
right? Um, I think that happens in books as well, and the big two end up stealing from them. You
Yeah.
know, it probably was easier to get away with that in the past than it might be now. But without the independence, like for example, Stephanie Williams, who I already brought up, she's writing Nubia right now. She wrote an independent book years ago called Living Heroes, which is a single spoof book where Storm, Monica Rambeau, She Hulk, and who's the other character? I forget who the other character is, but the four of them are basically the characters from Living Single, but they're heroes, and so their life is like them sharing an apartment. But here, she wrote that book, and now she's writing a DC. You know, now she's writing for DC.
Yeah.
So I think when people get a chance to check out the independents and they see how fruitful these stories are, it gives them an opportunity to come over to the big two, and then the
Yeah.
big two changes because the independent art creators are coming over
Yeah.
and doing work over there. So I think, yeah, I think the needle moves every time there's a big change or a big shift in independent art, whether it's comics, actual like painting,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
movies and TV.
Well, I think, like I said, what I'm loving is in just this wave of not your typical superhero kind of thing, just other different types of stories. Now, like I said, and I've had a few comic creators on that are doing blacks in horror,
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. Of course, we see Jordan Peele making a big splash with, black people being kind of the main characters in a horror style movie. Just
Yeah.
things that aren't, like you said, the stereotypical type of person or life,
Yeah.
because we have lives of varying,
We're
degrees.
part of all different aspects of
Yeah,
life.
we have
We had
all
a book in
different.
there that was about black cowboys. And it was a historical education book, but it was in comic book form,
Yeah,
and people would pick it up and they'd be like, "Black cowboys?" It was like, "Yeah, black cowboys is how cowboys were exist. Like
yeah,
cowboys didn't exist until black people were cowboys." And so there's that moment of just like, "Oh, wait." And
yeah,
they become interested in other things because they find out, hey, there's this story. I mean, we had another comic about, the Hawaiian surfers,
yeah,
not the, white guys that moved to Hawaii. To kind of show that like the brown people invented things,
yeah, yeah.
and now you know them as white things, but here's
Yeah,
the origin. And we
I,
could do that in comics because it's a lot more accessible. The other
yeah,
thing about comics that I love, and especially in whatever we can do in terms of black and brown kids reading books from the start, is that it improves vocabulary really quickly. Within reading literacy improves by like 47% in the first month or so of reading comics.
yeah,
Like there's real studies that show the benefit of comics. And since there tends to be lower literacy issues in black and brown communities because the educational systems in those places are usually lower funded, and all that kind
yeah,
of stuff. This is a way where you can fight against that. Giving them access to comics will allow them to improve literacy. They start to imprint words a lot easier because they can connect it to the images, and that will improve their reading in schools over time. So we started getting involved in schools too. Like, teachers would come in and create programs and stuff. And so while I am no longer a co-owner of the shop, I am aware of some of the programs that we were kind of starting before
yeah,
I transitioned out, where they're partnering. They have like a comic book club with a high school and stuff like that. So the goal is to
yeah,
keep pushing it out. Gulf Coast Cosmos was the first black owned comic book shop in Texas. And what we said was first black owned, Blasian owned, comic book shop. But it was only the 21st black owned comic book shop in the United States.
yeah,
So like you said earlier, we need more black owned comic book shops for people to feel more access. I think that is true. I also think that in the quote unquote mainstream stores, they need to start understanding
yeah,
that black kids, brown kids read comics,
yeah,
and adults too,
yeah,
and be able to work with us a little bit, and not just say there might be a black character. I don't know. Go back there.
yeah,
I don't want that experience to happen
yeah,
in one
yeah.
of our stores.
And I'm starting to, like I said, see, like you were saying, just such a great way of bringing history in there. I had him on, I think, early in season one. Super talented comic book artist and writer, Marcus Williams,
Hmm.
who's doing the,
Marcus does everything.
yeah. But his comic is the Tuskegee
Airs.
Airs,
Yeah.
and it's just a fantastic take on it, and I just so enjoy hearing the stories that he tells about people that come up to him during conventions and just are so enamored by his comic, but such a great way of just bringing a spotlight to not only you know the things that we've done in history, but just so many other important things. Like I said, Joshua Leonard has a great. It's not a comic per se comic book or that, but he has characters that are autistic. So it's
Hmm.
just different ways of, like I said, showing this. Like I said,
Yeah.
the
I mean,
regularness of us.
there's a preteen queer comic about werewolves. Like if you're a 13-year-old kid and you're like starting to pick up on your queerness and stuff like that, but you're really into like fantasy, and then you read this little book about werewolves that are
And
in
I'm like,
love. I
wow.
mean, there's no, the sky is the limit. There's just you. I mean, I've talked about these things that are quote unquote weird books. Like you got the preteen queer werewolf romance, and you got the lady who can't see ghosts unless she drinks coffee. Like you can just come up with stuff.
Yeah,
Like that's what's so amazing. What I think is really important too about Black and brown creators in particular is that the way we draw people who look like us
yeah,
is going to be different than when white people draw us.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, you can look at older books and see just how gross some of the art is, when they introduce an Asian or a Black or Latin character. Where now, when there is an artist from those categories, we look more like regular ass people. I think
Hey, I
that's
always said Franklin was looked just like a chocolate Charlie Brown. So
yeah. All
it's
they
like
did was color him in. Like that's all they did with
I loved him, but it was like okay, it
my
gave him a
co-host
little.
on BLERDcoMIXed, Sharmane. He has a theory that Pigpen is mixed. And I was like, why we gotta be the little dirty one? And he's just like, so the joke is he got a white mama, and so she don't know how to do his hair, and she don't know how to teach him like using washcloths, stuff like that. So if that's correct, then we got Franklin and we got Pigpen. We just need to
Oh
get
man.
Pigpen a washcloth. That's all we need.
Man,
I'm just
like I
kidding.
said, I was such a Peanuts nut. Everything Peanuts, everything Charles Schultz, I just love.
Yeah.
And that was really, like I said, the spark for me. Even though, like I said, he wasn't a creator of color, and there weren't a lot of characters, but that was, like I said, the spark for me that just got
Yeah.
me interested in comics and cartoons and all of that.
The
Um,
Peanuts have some magic though, because you can make an argument for them representing a lot of different things. Mental health is very present,
yeah, yeah,
depressed
they did. Yeah,
Charlie Brown, and
yeah.
the overachieving type A person with Lucy. Like I think you have
Yeah, the
that would be a place like
intellectual
you look for
Linus.
those nuggets, right?
Yeah,
That you can find representation in. I mean, for
yeah.
me, Linus, I was a blanket holder forever. And as an adult in therapy, you find out why I'm a blanket holder. But at the
Oh
time, he
man,
was just a character I could relate to.
oh man, I loved it. My of course my all time was Snoopy, just a
Just
cool
cool as hell.
character that just did him. He was
Yeah.
him.
There's some
Uh,
magic there, I think.
oh
I
yeah,
think there is.
always, and and you got to appreciate those kind of, like I said, um, creators, even white ones that do take that kind of conscious effort. Of course, Charles Schultz didn't have to create,
Sure, no.
Franklin, but I think somebody had, it was during the '60s, in
Hmm.
that time of unrest, somebody had wrote to him and asked him why
Yeah.
there wasn't a kid, and he put one in.
I think it was
Uh,
a little kid,
yeah,
wrote him a letter just like, and again, representation matters, right? You need to see people who look like you because you need to know that you're not different.
Yeah.
I think here's the thing is that we tend to say that like, okay, here's everybody in our neighborhood looks like this. So anybody who doesn't look like this is different. And then that person has to go through, and this is the story of a mixed kid too. That person has to go through walking around being different.
Yeah.
But I'm the main character in my story. So why am I the different one?
Yeah.
Y'all are different,
Yeah.
not me.
Yeah.
So if we get out of that idea that we're the different ones and just show that the reason why representation is so important is because not only does it show us that we exist, it
Yeah.
shows the other people that
That
we
we exist.
exist.
Yeah.
So Black Panther being one of the biggest movies of all time and going to a billion faster than anybody else,
Yeah.
that wasn't just Black people who were watching it.
No.
White
No.
people needed to see that because
Yeah.
they need to see us function without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shang-Chi being the same thing, it didn't do as well, but you know, same type of thing.
Yeah.
We needed to see a non-accented Asian hero without him being an Asian stereotype, without him being an Asian caricature, so that people could take these types of characters more seriously. White people, I guess, I want to say that. So I think representation matters goes multiple ways. It's not just that we need to see ourselves, which we absolutely do, because we need
Yeah.
to feel like we
Yeah.
exist. We need them to see us so that they don't think that we're not important.
Yeah.
That we don't have to have something like Black Lives Matter
Yeah.
as a term, like a call to action. Just let us matter.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think it's important.
No, for sure. Again, everybody just jumping in. We're having an amazing conversation with my friend Sharmane, for sure. Grim Reaper, appreciate you tuning in and checking out the show. Mr. Paul Brown III, loving the convo. I am too, so I'm glad you're loving it as well. But what are your kind of, you know, hopes about the, well, I'll take this back, and I'll ask you this because I was thinking about doing a separate video kind of on this topic. And but what do you think about AI as it pertains to comics, and you know your thoughts on that?
I have some I have some thoughts on it. I think I think with the comics with mm, okay. If the world wasn't as misogynist, as racist, as sexist, as anti-gay, as anti, you know, like ableist and all that other kind of stuff, if the world wasn't like that, I think AI art could be beautiful, magical, interesting. The problem is that, you know, people are creating AI with their own biases and things like that. And so a lot of the AI art comes out kind of questionable because of those biases, but also AI art is stealing from other
Yeah,
artists and
yeah,
remaking it based off of whatever prompts that you provided. And in some cases, like actual pieces of art are being taken from
yeah,
people
yeah,
and they're not profiting on it. So
yeah,
if someone says, like, I want to write a comic, but I don't have any artistic skill set. So I'm going to go onto the internet and I'm going to AI create my panels. I think that's a great tool for let me get an idea of what this can look like. Let
yeah.
me get some
Ideation,
inspiration for
yeah,
this, you know.
ideation and
But
inspiration.
that's not the thing you print. That's the thing you use on your vision
Yeah,
board of what your work is, your storyboard of what your work is, right? So like me, I'm working on a comic with a friend of mine, and I can kind of sketch, but I didn't cultivate that after college, and so I'm not that great of an artist anymore. So I'm not going to be able to draw my own thing, but I can sketch out an idea a little bit and roughly give this to an artist and say, this is kind of what I'm thinking, but could you make it
yeah,
art, right? I could do that, or I can say I can't get this thing in my head right, so let me go to the AI thing and type a thing in. I get a prompt, and I've done that a couple times, and I've gotten some stuff that was really inspiring that I've clipped out as a way of like, okay, use this to set the scene,
yeah,
you know, for what I'm doing. And I might even show that to another artist, you know, one that I end up paying to write my, you know, to draw my book, and say like, here's something I was using to inspire me for this or whatever. I think in that case it's good because it might allow you to, it might help you through your writing process because
yeah,
you can kind of visualize some things.
yeah,
What I hope doesn't happen, which I think is happening because I'm seeing it online, is that people end up actually using that
yeah,
for
yeah,
their prints and stuff, and in that case, you don't know who didn't get paid for that
yeah,
work. And that's something that I think is a problem. I think it can be a brilliant tool for research and
Yeah.
for preparation and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think you can argue that it's not harmful if you're using it for your own personal research and inspiration. But if you have to end up using it for your print, I think that's when things get a little bit like,
Yeah. Yeah. I know there was
yikes.
a big thing, and there still is a lot of artists have dropped off ArtStation because ArtStation now is
Hmm.
allowing AI art to be,
Yeah.
people that are using AI to post their artwork and stuff. And I'm like you, I had this conversation just the other day with somebody talking about AI, and I don't have, I'm kind of on both sides. I think it's a tool,
Hmm.
but used in like ideation or
Yeah.
just ideas, or even small little elements, if in the overall grand scheme of your project. There was one motion effects artist, and he was doing like a scene, kind of a sci-fi scene set in a church with this 3D character, doing some special effects and stuff. So he used AI to generate the background image, which was
Yeah.
just this church, and it was just an element in his
Yeah.
overall thing. It wasn't,
That seems fair to me too.
it was just a background. He said, I think his prompt was, I'd like an old style church set at night, inside type of thing. And it just gave him this gothic, and he wanted a gothic look type of thing. And it just spit out this, a bunch of like images
Yeah.
that kind of fit within his parameters that he used as, like I said, a background element. It wasn't, okay, this is my art or anything like
Yeah.
that. It was just a piece in his overall project. And I think using it like that, using it as ideation or just inspiration,
Hmm.
is the thing. Like you, I'm worried about those ones that just pull, these
Yeah.
things and put it up as their art.
I'm always worried about like what black person's not getting paid for this. What brown person, what disabled person, what person needed this for rent and
Yeah,
didn't get it. I'm worried about that. But even the way like so one of my characters, I have a moment that refers back to standing outside of a middle school, and the middle school I was picturing was the one I went to.
yeah,
And I was digging through the internet to try to find a picture because I don't live in that city anymore, because that was all I was picturing and I couldn't get it out of my head. So I was going to take a photo from the internet to send it to an artist to be like, here's the middle school that I have in my mind. I think using the AI that way is the same type of thing. It's
yeah,
like writing a research paper, right? You research by reading other people's stuff, but you restate it. You
yeah,
don't copy and paste. That's plagiarism.
yeah,
That's, and we have rules about that. So I think in case of AI, that's the thing. That being said, before I realized people were getting stole from, I was jumping on there like crazy. I was like, what do I look like in space? What do I look like in as a mermaid? What do I look like as a fairy? And I think what was beneficial about that is that, black and brown people, we don't get to see ourselves in fantasy. We
yeah.
don't get to see ourselves in these things that often. I mean, we can tell that because when the Lord of the Rings show on
Oh yeah,
Amazon popped up, everybody fell apart because there was a
yeah.
light
It's
skinned,
like,
green eyed
yeah.
elf. Like, oh my God, a mythical being came out
uh,
black? How? I'm so confused. So I think like in that case, it was good for us to get to go on there and see ourselves as fantasy characters. That part was fun. The
yeah,
problem is when we cross that over into using it as a part of like the work that we do as, say, podcasters, TikTokers, content
yeah,
creators. I don't want to be taking from other black and brown people either.
yeah,
By accident, or especially not on purpose, but by accident. When I discover it, I stop,
yeah,
and I talk about it. I put it out there, I put it out there.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, like, you don't have to really, what Grim Reaper's saying, you don't have to go any further than Ariel being cast as,
Oh man, yeah, yeah. Black
because the
Mermaid.
original early stories of mermaids came from Africa and Asia.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can't even conceive of the idea of and try to use science as a way to explain why mermaids can't be
Oh
black.
man, it was funny.
um
It's just,
it's stuff like that. Like, I think the AI could have been helpful in allowing us to see stuff like that
yeah,
if it didn't need to steal from other artists to make the art. If
yeah,
it could just manifest it without like literal copy and paste and just
yeah,
changing someone's face.
yeah.
um
Well,
Yeah.
like I said, I don't have a problem with it if you're using it in it as, like I said, inspiration or just ideas for you to create your own thing,
Yeah.
and not, like I said, take, oh, okay, I gave it this prompt, it brought me back this image, bam, this is what I created, type of thing. That I have a problem with. Like I said, as a tool, I
As
love
a yeah.
AI. Photoshop has, Adobe
Yeah.
has AI
Right,
Sensei,
exactly.
and I would much rather let Photoshop make a selection than me spend the time selecting something. So,
Yeah. I
as
don't know
a
how to make the swirly swirly things that move in the background, but give me something that allows me to use the swirly swirly things. If I've paid for it, then whoever created it gets a chunk. I'm hoping,
yeah,
you
and it's
know.
still early, and I like I said, AI is like the Wild West now. It's just there's
Mm.
still a lot of stuff they're trying to figure out. Ethics, morals, are still all this stuff that's going to be have to be worked out. But as a tool, I think if it makes your job easier, whatever that
Yeah.
job may be, then that's fine and all fine and well for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Everybody that's just chiming in, please jump in and give us your thoughts as well. Um, but for you, what are some of the characters now that that you're starting to see that you really like and just resonate with, that are coming out now?
Well, I I think getting a chance to see Nubia created or
Mm,
by a
yeah.
blog, and this is now like what the third time I mentioned Stephanie Williams. I only kind of stalk Stephanie. It's fine. We
Stephanie, if you're watching,
Yeah, Stephanie, if you're watching. So like I got a chance to talk to her too, and ask her about that process, and I think what my biggest takeaway was just that, like, there are just things, these subtle little things that are part of our everyday life that when we see it elsewhere, we know where we exist. Like, it's just this question of making us feel like we exist. And when you have a character that, like, in a comic with laid edges, or wearing a bonnet, or stopping, like, in a comic, stopping to lotion up or something like that, like, just things that are like part of our regular everyday life that
Whoa, I'm gonna
for
get
some,
ashy here.
you know what I'm saying? Like, for some reason, it just is like, oh, I know a black woman wrote this. There was this moment, and this is from Far Sector, written by N.K. Jemisin. Um, uh, f- uh, she's a Green Lantern that's from a sector so far away that, like, she's a human, but she's sent so far away that they don't even have a name for it, so they're just calling it Far Sector. And one day, in one part of these pages, she calls somebody Hi Sadiddy. I mean, like, when you're just flipping through, you're not expecting it to happen, but when you happen, you're just like, "Oh, a black woman wrote this." Moving on. Like, now I don't have to question the authentic, even if I didn't, like, I already knew it was N.K.
Yeah.
Jemisin, but if I just picked it up and I saw something like that, it would be like, "Oh, yeah, no, that's a way to show me that a white person didn't write this, because
You pick up
they
the
wouldn't say
subtle,
that.
yeah,
You
you
wouldn't
pick up the
say that kind of stuff."
subtleties of things for sure.
There's a part in one of the Static books, and I don't remember what issue it is, but it's drawn by Nicholas Draper Ivy, and Static is just he's just making a hand gesture, like he don't believe what you just said, but it's the body, it's the positioning that he did, that you just know a white guy didn't draw that, because a
Yeah,
white guy's body doesn't move like that, because our bodies move like that, because we live in neighborhoods where we see people move like that.
yeah,
Like, I think this this getting these characters like that, I think that's the kind of stuff that's important. So for me, it's really not it's really kind of the revamping of characters that were written by white people before, now becoming realized in what they are. So seeing Nubia as a black woman,
yeah, yeah,
being written by a black woman, I for the aspects of my life that where my blackness is available, I'm seeing aspects of that in Nubia, and
yeah,
I get to connect with that kind of stuff. with Echo. I'm not an indigenous person, but I've always really liked Echo as a character. She's got a terrible, tragic backstory. I'm really into that
Yeah.
kind of stuff because I'm into Japanese melodrama, and Japanese melodrama is like the hero always has a terrible existence. I can relate to it. But now that she's being written by an indigenous woman, there's just things that, she's not saying like stereotypical cartoon things that they used to make
Yeah.
indigenous people look like on TV. She's saying things that where she's, interlacing a language in with the English and things like that, stuff that we would do naturally if we were speaking in English when we have a different language. I do it all the time with Japanese. It's stuff like that. Like I'm getting to see characters that were created with a real stereotypical like racist lens in the beginning and
Yeah.
now are being written by the people from those cultures, and they just seem so much real.
Yeah.
And so I would say that with Nubia, with Echo. um I mean, even the what's his name, Tim, his last name is escaping me, but the person that's writing the Batman, the new Batman, I Am Batman series, or has, it's closed now, but where the character is one of the Fox kids,
Yeah.
and he's having to face what it's like to work as a Batman with a black face,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's he decided to cover his face at first because he was in a police state, and he didn't want to have to explain why he's a black hero. He eventually pops it off, but like even getting to see that, like, what would Batman be like if black black all those
Batman
words,
was black.
Batman was black. If
Yeah.
Batman was black, what would he go through? And getting a chance to see that written by someone, from the community, it just feels so much more real now. So like I'm getting something different in my comic book reading than I got to get as a kid.
Yeah.
It's more realistic and fantasy at the same time, and I think like that's great that we get a chance to have that now because we didn't have it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. What are your thoughts on um, comics? Kind of switching up those main mainstream characters to be,
The
they
race
feel like,
swap characters.
yeah, kind of, they feel like making Superman black as opposed to, it's kind of different with,
Yeah.
Batman, because at some point he's a human, he's going to age, he's going
Right.
to pick up the mantle. Spider-Man, I get it. He's a
Yeah.
teenager, but as far as like switching a gender of a superhero just to
Sure.
feel like they appease a certain audience.
I don't think it's appeasing necessarily. I think that if there's something specific about the character that grounds them into whatever race or gender they were originally created in, you go ahead and keep them in that. You don't give us a white T'Challa. You always give us a black African T'Challa. That's just how it's going to be. Um, could he maybe have a daughter that's more like him than the mother and becomes a version of him?
Yeah.
Sure, fine. I think there's passing the mantle and swapping the character that is different.
Yeah.
In passing the mantle, like let's say Aquaman.
Yeah.
Aquaman is now being played by Aquaman. Now the person who holds the mantle now is Jackson Hyde, who is a black man. He was Aqualad before. He's also a queer man. Um, he's taken on the mantle of Aquaman, and Aquaman is releasing the mantle to him, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like oh, we're just appeasing. It's just like, I've aged out. You're the person who's the right person for this job.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. That's what they're doing with the Spider-Man characters, because you have the Spider-Verse. You can literally have any kind of spider
They have
person.
a pig as
You
a
know,
spider.
right? You got Spider Ham. Like, I mean, you can do anything with it, and
Yeah.
so when they put them all together, it's great to see them interact because you get to see how all the people who the thing that binds them is they're all spider people and they've all been impacted by this spider event in their
Yeah.
life. But the way their life is, like, there's a like a gut wrenching panel between a conversation between Miles and Peter, where Miles's Spidey sense is going off all the time,
Yeah.
and Peter's isn't, and they realize this, and Miles is like, "Oh, it's not like this for you all the time," and Peter goes, "Oh no," like in this way of just like, so you're not just dealing with crime in the moment or safety in the moment, you're dealing with life as a black
Black
presenting
women, yeah,
person, Afro Latin person who is always in danger. So you're always triggered. That tells me that a Black person, or at least a Latin person somewhere, was writing that,
yeah,
because a white person wouldn't necessarily know that we experience life that way. Um, so yeah, if the character, if it doesn't matter, like if the character wasn't created in a certain gender intentionally because that was important. Like let's say you had I'm trying to think of a character like Black Widow. You couldn't make Black Widow a man
yeah,
because the important aspect of the Black Widow group is that they were Russian spies and they
yeah,
use sex as a weapon. Like that's part of what they're reared to do. So
yeah,
that doesn't translate well if you were to change it to a man.
yeah,
But you could make a version of the character that takes on a mantle and he's just a different thing. It doesn't matter what race, say, a Black Widow is. It could, that can be any race of person. Whereas a character like T'Challa, it does matter that
yeah,
T'Challa is African,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I think in those cases, they can change any kind of character. And as a comic book nerd, I'm used to continuity changing a lot. You got to reset your characters every so often so that the new audience can enjoy it. It also gives us older, readers something new to look forward to. My only beef, and I'm all over the internet with this, my only beef is you cannot change the core personality, the core characteristic. So, like Joker. Joker can't become woke all of a sudden.
yeah,
Joker needs to be chaos at all costs. You can't give him a reason to care about one thing, but not care about the rest of the world. That undoes the Joker. You
yeah,
can't do that with him. A good example of them doing that, not in comics, but Boba Fett recently. Boba Fett is all about that money.
yeah.
He is a bounty hunter, and his credo is don't get in the way of my money. Then they make this TV show where they let people get in the way of his money and he accepts it and he's fine with it. And in fact, he voluntarily lets things get in the way of his money. They've ruined Boba's
Yeah.
personal hard, his core characteristic. They have ruined that. And so I don't care about this Boba because they took the Boba-ness away from Boba. When they do that in comics, it's the same kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
giving us a queer version of Superman. It's Superman's son, right? He's a
yeah,
bisexual character. It's not Superman is gay now. It is a person with the Superman mantle
yeah, yeah,
is, or bisexual more specifically. I think that kind of stuff is fine only because, not only because, that's a weird way of saying it. It's fine because it reflects what the world is like.
yeah,
My world is very Black, weekend Japanese,
yeah,
and queer.
yeah,
So if I see Blackness, queerness, and Japaneseness in something, that's more reflective of the reality I live in. But if everything looked like that, that would be weird for someone like you who might not have access to Japanese culture. And you're just like, why is there always ramen in this scene? I don't know, whatever. Like you just wouldn't always see that kind of stuff. And that's what I think white people in general don't understand
yeah,
when we have to watch movies and TV shows and news and all kinds of stuff where they're the most represented thing,
yeah,
and we've had to force ourselves to learn relate to them,
yeah.
where they can't even let one of us end up in something
Yeah.
without them
Well,
being
I
like,
think
oh my
that's why you
god.
get that feedback of, like I said, oh, you made Ariel, Black Mermaid.
Yeah,
That's why you get all that kind of feedback when they do make, this change. They even,
because they've
like I
never
said,
had to be forced to learn how to relate to people that don't look like them.
yeah, and it's like I think at the core of it is the story, and we all share things that are, which is why, like I said, I think movies, like Black Panther and all the other ones, they do well because at the core of it, we all share these same, life experiences,
Yeah,
maybe in a different kind of way, but
different
we
way,
all
but
feel the
wouldn't you want
same
to
thing.
protect your home if it was being invaded?
Yeah, I
Yeah, we
mean,
do too. Here's how it looks when we do it. Like it's that simple, I
oh
think.
man. I remember and this was a long time, and it kind of got me to thinking. But I remember Richard Pryor made a joke about Logan's Run, and I don't know if he ever saw that
Years
sci-fi
and years ago, I don't remember enough of
Logan's
it though.
Run, but he made a joke about it on one of his old albums. He said, I don't see any black people. He said, white folks don't plan on us being in here for the future. It's like,
Oh, that's what it is. Right. That's exactly it.
he said, white folks don't plan on us being around for the future.
And that's what's terrifying about something like Star Wars or like the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars is in Star Wars, there's one black guy for decades. And now there's two more. Yay! Two more black people, right? Like, whereas in Star Trek,
who was the woman in Star Wars? The woman kind of Darth Vader. She was black. That got all that feedback.
The third sister, yeah.
That got feedback, and I'm like, oh man, why is this? You know,
it shouldn't be that difficult because you know what? It doesn't happen to me every day. I can go all day, and the only kind of white person I see is my half Arabic husband.
Yeah.
Because my life doesn't revolve around like I don't live in a place where there's predominantly white people. I don't work in a space that's predominantly white people. So I can go my whole day and not really see any white people. And yet I'm capable of watching a television show with all white people and not going, this doesn't make any sense to me. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
How do I live my life now? Yeah. Where that seems to happen on the flip side of it in mass, and it's really it's so strange that they can't even imagine more than one of us in a room.
Well, and I think that goes to your point about, I mean, us having to or I won't say accommodate, but having to adjust living in a white world.
Yeah.
Like you said, us on a day-to-day basis, at some point in our life or during our day, we have an interaction, whether it's going to the bank, whether it's going to the grocery store or something like that. White person doesn't necessarily have to have that. They could stick within their own kind of circle and deal, you know, job-wise or banking-wise or just everyday things that they do and still, you know, like I said, it's rare, but, you know, still not have, they don't have to necessarily deal with us as people of color on a day-to-day basis if they don't have to. I think us, we have to.
Yeah, at some point we end up having to.
We have to kind of work with and navigate through this day, you know, dealing in some kind of capacity of it.
It's just really interesting that it ends up being a thing where someone's nerddom is affected or their childhood is ruined by the presence and stuff like that. And of course that says more about the person speaking than the industry. But I think what the industry is doing now, whether reluctantly or not, is they're trying to find a way to make the books reflect more of the reality of what the world is. And the reality of the world is that brown people collectively are the majority.
Oh yeah, collectively are the majority.
You know,
and my hope is not only do you know, which they're, like I said, kind of starting to do now, the big two, tap into these black creators that are creating their own characters of color and not just kind of this rehash of, okay, let's dust off this, you know, let's dust off the Falcon and see what we can make out of this. I mean, there's so many creators out there. There's so many, like I said, comic strip artists or comic book artists, comic book writers out there that are creating, you know, original characters.
Yeah.
I think that's something I'm really excited about seeing starting to come forward, you know, just original creators starting to come up with these stories.
Yeah. Moses Ingram, that was the third sister in the Star Wars.
Yeah, man. We got some great comments here. Sheb was the best part of the show. She was the best part of the show. I don't think I heard, and I'm assuming you're talking about
the third sister character. Because the world melted down because how dare they have a force sensitive black person on a TV show, but she was amazing.
And I think that's the thing too, that kind of,
like, we can't be magic.
I don't want to say frighten them, but kind of unnerve them that, you know, we do things differently and oftentimes better. You know, you can see that in sports when Tiger Woods came onto the scene.
Yeah,
you know, it just threw everybody backwards. When the Williams sisters came onto the scene, it just threw everybody backwards.
Yeah,
you know, when blacks started, you know, getting into just people of color starting to get into realms that they didn't necessarily think was our space or we would excel in, we would get in and excel type of thing. I think that really shakes them in a way that they're not used to being shaken.
Well, I think they're afraid that we would do to them what they did to us, but we don't move that way. You
Yeah,
know, it's
yeah,
just not the same thing. I mean, I'm not saying there won't be some. You know, I mean,
yeah.
no one's a monolith, but I think collectively in power, we don't do the same types of things that they historically have done to us. So.
For sure, for sure.
So let us have the force. We'll be fine. Because guess what? It's a movie.
Yes, let us have some power, Spider-Man power, Superman
You know,
power, all that
like,
stuff. Hey,
we want to swing from strings on a building too.
Yeah, stick to a wall. Hey, I want to be invincible as well. So, I think you'll find that we'll still save you.
Yeah. It's like,
still save you as well.
Fine.
Again, like I said, everybody that just jumping in, we've been having an amazing conversation with my friend Sharmane. And again, like I had mentioned earlier about being conscious of time, we're already rolling into an hour and a half. It goes by so quick.
You got to turn me off because I will talk.
I'm the same way. I can go on and on and on, especially about this space and about this industry. For you, kind of what's been the best piece of advice or the best kind of guiding advice that you've been given that's really helped serve you?
I think it's always a version of sort of like trusting yourself in some kind of way, like knowing yourself well, or a some version of that. On my Militantly Mixed podcast, which is my podcast for mixed race identity, my slogan on that show is to be your mixed ass self, and whatever that means to you. If it's you look one race, but you grew up with the culture of the other, and that's you represent, like whatever it means to you. And a version of that I kind of carry across everything that I do. If I'm being nerdy, be my nerdy ass self. If I'm being queer, be my queer ass self. Whatever it is, that the thing about being true to yourself and is very important. And I think I was lucky, even though I did have a really tumultuous childhood. I had a few people in my life that would always tell me that like that I could trust myself, like that I've shown that I do the right type of things in most cases. And so in the ways in which that I can be true to myself, um, I've tried to carry a version of that across all the things that I do.
Yeah. Oh man, I have a feeling that this. There we go.
There we are.
There we go. And on that note, I always like to, and it doesn't want to do it. There's my bomb, Demille. I always like to drop a bomb on a nugget that's shared for sure. Always trust yourself. No, definitely is a great piece of advice for sure. And like I said, just to go back and kind of reiterate what Sharmane said, make sure that you connect with her. Check out all her podcasts. Great podcasts for sure. You can find all. Man, let me turn this off here because this is going to really wig out my scenes. All right. But you can make sure that you connect with Sharmane. You can find her on all these platforms. Check out her podcast, connect with her on Twitter and the social media. Again, all this stuff is going to be in the show notes on the YouTube channel, so make sure you hop on over there. You can get all the information. If you just jumping in late, you can check out the whole episode for sure. But do make sure that you reach out to Sharmane and check out her podcasts, multiple podcasts for sure. Sharmane, like I said, this was such an amazing kickoff for the new season. I couldn't have asked for a better guest on the show, and so glad that let me get this off here. So glad that we've had a chance to, or I had a chance to get you on before. Well, not that you moving would have prevented it. But I'm glad that I got you on before all the chaos of the move.
Yeah, it's gonna get chaotic
yeah,
soon,
it's gonna
for
get
sure, for sure.
chaotic. So I'm glad we got you on before all of that happened. And so appreciate one just connecting in the first place. At the Comic Palooza, like I said, we just kind of hit it off naturally, and just I so enjoyed your personality. I knew I had to have you on the show. So I can't thank you enough for being a part of the show, being a part of the Color of Motion family, and sharing your extensive knowledge on comics.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Any chance I get a chance to be like brown
The
femme
Blerd.
talking about nerd stuff, I think is important.
Well, I am definitely looking forward to having you back on the show. Like I said, I'm planning on doing a video and bringing on like a panel to talk about AI. But I'm not sure how that'll fall between the time, before you move and all of that. So if I feel like I'm going to have the opportunity, I'm definitely going to reach out to you to have you on the panel, because that's something that's been on my mind lately, is to bring on some creators to talk about AI and just their thoughts on it and stuff. So really, really looking forward to that. Grim Reaper, I appreciate that, and thank you for subscribing for sure. Make sure you continue to check out all the episodes and support the show. And I'll make a big call to action to everybody. Like I said, my goal for this year is to really level up the show, get it out there to as many people as possible. So I cannot do this all by myself. So please, if you know of anybody, creator or anybody that's just passionate about this space, share it with them, because there's definitely been a lot of gems from all my guests that will help to inspire you or inspire them to continue on, and that it is possible, and that it's all in you to do. So please share the show, get it out there to as many people as possible. I would be so appreciative of it. Sharmane, again, thank you so much, for being, like I said, a part of this show and a part of the family. I can't thank you enough. If you could hang out just a minute in the green room while I close this out, I would appreciate it. Yeah, if you could hang out for just a second, well, I appreciate it. But everybody, please, like I said, help me thank again Sharmane Fury for making this first episode of season 3 amazing. Like I said, kudos. We all can't thank you enough. So everybody, please help me thank again Sharmane Fury for coming on and blessing us with her knowledge and skills. Hang out again, like I said, hang out for a quick minute there, Sharmane, while I close this out, because I want to talk to you before you head out there. Again, everybody, oh man, this is really going to be, let me jump over to here. Let me see if this does it again. Oh no, this is one thing I hate about this. Okay, there we go. Geez. I think what it is when my transitions don't turn off, it really freaks out my scenes. So everybody, this has been such an amazing season kickoff. I can't, like I said, words cannot express. I appreciate everybody that's tuned in, checked out the show, supported the show in the previous seasons. Like I said, I got some amazing things planned for season 3. A lot of great guests, a lot of great giveaways and prizes and things. So just stay tuned. It's going to be kind of a fun ride this season. I'm looking forward to really, having some fun this time. I think maybe even next week, another thing I got kind of planned is a call-in portion for the show. So I think maybe next week I may try it where you can call in, ask a question of the guest. We can bring you on live, through audio, and bring you on and have you call into the show to ask your questions. So that's something else I'm looking to play with as well. And like I said, just so many new things for sure. again, I appreciate you, Paul, for that. Sharmane, like, was a great guest for sure, and looking forward to bringing her back on, probably after she gets settled in her new location for sure. Miss Maggie, appreciate that as well. I appreciate you joining me for this inaugural episode of season 3 for sure. Make sure that you tune in next week because it's going to be, like I said, we're going to keep ratcheting this up for sure. Been super looking forward to having my next guest on, Mr. Nerding Momodou, 3D animator with Lotus Fly Animation, does some amazing work coming out of Africa. So I'm super looking forward to finally getting him on the show. He was actually supposed to be on in early season 2, but something came up and ended up having to reschedule. So I'm finally getting him on the show. So super looking forward to that as well. Again, like I said, I can't thank you all enough for being a part of this episode and really making episode, I'm not going to say episode 1, but the inaugural episode of season 3 a big success. So thank you to all the viewers for sure. Make sure, like I said, you tune in next week because it's going to be fun. We're going to continue on this journey through season 3. Like I said, I'm trying some new things, so kind of the format moving forward this year is going to be 2 months live, a month off. And within that month, I may do like a solo episode or 2. But it'll be 2 months of live guests and then a month off and then 2 months. I'm going to try something different. So just bear with me, continue to ride with me, come with me on this ride, and it will be so appreciative for sure. Wow, with that said, closing it up, man, oh man, this has been a fun episode, and can't thank you enough. So I will see you same time next week, same time, same bat channel, and you guys have a great rest of the week. Cheers.